What's up guys, it's Erradic here, and today I've got an interesting video for you. In my last video we went over how I got elite for the first time ever in season 4 of Dragonflight, and today I'd like to kind of talk about the changes that I made to my gameplay over the past couple seasons to take me from being a duelist to being able to hit that elite level. I'd like to preface this by saying that this is not just something I did on my own. I went out seeking the advice of more advanced players, and a lot of these are just tips and tricks that I've learned and the culmination of my experience over the past few seasons. If you like this type of video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. Now, last season I had the privilege of getting a VOD review, actually a couple VOD reviews from Sidu, who, if you don't know, is one of the best healers in the game. He's won multiple AWC championships, and he's pretty good at pretty much every healing class. One of his big complaints and off the bat was that I had my abilities all over my action bars, to where I was having to look in different areas for different types of abilities. To me, this is probably the least important of the changes I've made, but I still think it's a good one to mention. What I've done is I've tried to kind of group my rotational abilities together, my cooldowns together, you know, my utility stuff like static and root and tremor and whatnot, thunderstorm over here, so that when you are having to glance at your bars, you can easily tell what's on cooldown, what abilities you have left when it comes to defensives and stuff like that. And I really do think it has helped my game over the course of this season. I know when he reviewed my gameplay, I had like my primordial wave over here in the bottom right with, you know, everything else over here just mix and matched over here. But like I said, I've got like my rotational abilities right here. I've got cooldowns put together, and then anything that you like to use together I will also try to put over here. So like I have my static and root, because when I'm kiting, that's usually what I'll rotate between. I've got my trinket right next to my link, because that's often what I'll be trying to use together. Again, we've got our primordial wave with the nature swiftness, and then I've got some abilities macroed in here so that I have more visibility on them. For example, this is actually my Earth Shield keybind, but because I don't really need to see Earth Shield because it's always up, I made the icon primordial wave so that I can have just more visibility on when it's available again. Another huge issue Sidu had with my VODs is that I wasn't using my focus frame. I do have Arena 123 shears and hexes, and I really thought I was good with that. I'd kind of focused on getting better at using those, and I had gotten pretty good. But after him mentioning it a couple times, I did set up a focus wind shear and started using my focus frame a lot more. And I've got to say, if you're not using it because you've got Arena 123 keybinds, you really need to try it out, because it has helped a ton. When you've got your health bars over here and a focus frame over here, it's a lot easier to see when people are using abilities you might want to stop or line or whatever. And when you've got, you know, your arena frames over here, but you're healing the targets over here, even the best players are going to miss certain casts just trying to watch out for this. The focus frame has helped me out a ton, and having a dedicated like kick for my focus frame has helped a ton as well. I've gotten way better at interrupting spells in arena with shear, and I've also become a lot more aware of abilities that maybe I'm trying to avoid. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is tracking defensives of your teammates. This is more for healers, but it's important for DPS as well. Over the past couple seasons, I've really tried to focus on knowing when my teammates have cooldowns, and really using that information to know when I should shrink it or how I should react in certain situations. And I'm going to talk about this here in a minute, but setting up your UI so that you can track your team's defensives is super important. As you can see over here on the left, I've got my teammates' defensives. It looks like we're struggling right now. Everybody's got all their cooldowns. We're 3 minutes into a solo shuffle, so yeah, and we've used pretty much everything. It's probably going to end here soon. And having this information is just so important. I would say as a duelist player, you really just try to save your trinket till the last moment where you think you have to use it to get a cooldown off. And once you start tracking your teammates' CDs, it becomes a lot easier to do that correctly, because even if you've got maybe a teammate on half health, but you can see that they're in the middle of having, you know, die by the sword, and you've got double melee on them, you could still sit maybe a 5-second CC without having to trinket. Whereas if you're not tracking those defensives, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to trinket immediately and start pumping heals. So yeah, tracking my teammates' defensives and using that information to determine how I play has helped me a ton. So kind of along that same line is tracking buffs and debuffs on your teammates. I used to see interfaces like this and think this was just too much information, but I've come to find that it's actually super helpful. Like over here, I can see that there's blur, but I can also see it on his nameplate here, which makes it a lot better. And especially for things like earthen wall totem, knowing whether or not my teammate is in them, it helps a lot without having to look like where exactly they're at on the map, which you should be aware of that as well, but seeing it clearly that the earthen wall is on them. So like in this moment, I can see that both of my DPS are in earthen wall, and then when they get out of the earthen wall, I can know that maybe I need to move it. And I'm sure there's some of this kind of stuff with any of the healing specs out there, or maybe even some of the DPS specs as well. Having this information is actually super useful. And as much as it clutters kind of the unit frames, I actually think there's more positive to it than it is a con. Now, I did hit 2400, but it wasn't solo shuffle, and I would say that the biggest factor to this is recognizing what utility my class has to counter certain specs. So I play as a Resto Shaman, and right here we're facing a Resto Shaman, and so I need to be thinking about what I can do to counter specifically the Resto Shaman, but the DPS as well. In solo shuffle, it kind of feels like a 1v1 between you and the other healer, but let's say I am against a Resto Shaman. What do I need to do? What I'm really looking to do is going to be to interrupt any nature spell that will allow me to get a hex off without him being able to ground or interrupt my cast, and vice versa. He's going to be looking to do the same thing. When I look at the other specs on this team, we're looking at Marksman Hunter and Windwalker Monk. We don't have a ton of counter for the Marksman Hunter, but maybe doing a lightning lasso on his burst. I would play probably Stone Skin Totem for the 10% damage reduction to physical damage, and looking for hexes on his cooldowns as well. And then we've got a Windwalker. I'm going to be looking to take care of Serenity in any way possible. That's going to be his biggest cooldown. I need to make sure that I have like static up when Serenity is coming off cooldown to kite him away. I'm going to be looking to get a hex off immediately. I know that he can't range interrupt me, so I'm going to feel a little bit more comfortable maybe trying to hex him, although it'll be hard with the rest of Shaman and Marksman on this team, and stuff like that. I would say there's, you know, like really good counters that you have for certain classes. For example, if we're facing a Holy Priest, they're going to be looking to stun and fear me, but I know that I can Thunderstorm while I'm stunned, so if a priest stuns me, comes in for the fear, if you can knock them back before they get in range of the fear, that can be really good. That can, you know, turn a, you know, potentially 8-second CC chain into only 3 seconds. On the other side of that, if you're a Holy Priest, knowing that you can actually change your Chastise Stun to a Disorient can be really good information as well. I've had a lot of Holy Priests change it to the Disorient Chastise, and it may have a different name, but that makes it to where I can't Thunderstorm off the fear, and so they're able to get that CC chain every time. It's just knowing about your toolkit, and I don't want to go too much in detail like specifically about Resto Shaman here. Maybe I'll do another video on that sometime, but like one thing I found out last season, and I think maybe I'd known it before but I kind of forgot about it, is like warriors can intervene to stop Shattering Throw from breaking a bubble or ice block, that kind of thing. Man, when you put me on the spot, I can't think of a whole lot more, but I know there's a ton of different things you can do. If you're facing Resto Druids, you're going to be really looking to purge their buffs. You can also Thunderstorm when they try to bash Cyclone you. I just kind of want to go through all the healers just so I can kind of think about it. When we're facing Preservation Evokers, some of the most effective CC against Preservation Evokers are actually roots. So you can use Static and Earthbind Totem to shut a Preservation Evoker down a lot harder than even some of your other CCs. And the nice thing about those two is they are not actually stopped by Nullifying Shroud. Holy Paladins, we want to just make sure that we're always ready to purge bops as soon as we can, and stuff like that. It's going to be different for every class, and every class is going to have some sort of weird interaction probably that is super effective against other specs. Another thing I started doing specifically this season is doing VOD reviews of my own gameplay. I will say this is one of the most tedious and kind of annoying things to have to do, but if you really are serious about improving your gameplay, watching your videos back, pausing, you know, figuring out maybe what you could have done better in certain situations, or maybe what you did well in certain situations is important. And a lot of times it's important to, you know, watch the full games and not just watch the last 10 seconds and be like, oh, I could have done something there, because sometimes the reason you lose an arena is because of a decision you make, you know, maybe a minute or two even before it ends. Watching for patterns that you constantly make and trying to improve on those is super important. And from these VOD reviews, whether they be you reviewing your own gameplay or maybe having a more experienced player review your videos, is really working on the parts of your game that you need to improve on. I would say like within the past season or two, I've become exponentially better at using wind shear. I think, you know, in season 1 and 2, I was a great healer just rotationally, but I wasn't using my toolkit to the fullest extent because I wasn't using wind shear and I wasn't using maybe static totems as well. And I think I've become so much better at that. And when you start fully utilizing your toolkit to its full potential, that it's really going to take your gameplay to the next level. And the last thing I would say that I've made changes on is really trying to focus on improving my user interface. And this is not an ad in any way, but once SkillCap released their PvP UI, I immediately downloaded it because I don't like personally messing with add-ons at all. They have a full add-on pack that you can just download. It installs everything, it configures everything. I have made some adjustments to it, but like I said, a lot of this information that I'm getting now is from that add-on pack, and I didn't have it before. And you know, the first things that I talked about in the video was some of this debuff and buff tracking as well as defensive tracking. And yeah, I would say that's probably been the biggest improvement to my game. You can see here that I've got a weak aura for my healing tide totem. If I have a healing tide off cooldown, like I have one available and I don't have one down, it's going to turn red. And this is a custom weak aura I got for myself. This wasn't included in any add-on pack, but it's something that I noticed I was doing wrong. Was sometimes I was letting my healing stream totems sit off a cooldown, and sometimes even letting them double cap. So I wanted to, you know, create or get a weak aura that helps me improve the parts of the gameplay that I know I'm messing up on. Once you've identified where you really need to improve, maybe look into finding weak auras or other add-ons that will help you improve that specific part of your gameplay. And that's all I really have for now. If you have any questions about specific parts of this video, please leave them down in the comments. If there's other things that maybe you've improved on as you've increased in rating, feel free to leave those down in the comments as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video if this helped, and I will see you guys in the arenas.